welcome to Crafty Creations by Carrie, or my Instagram is Crafty Disney Mama, so you can find me on either of those. This is my very first YouTube video, and so please bear with me as I learn the ropes to making these videos. So I just started out sewing about 6 months ago. So this channel is going to be essentially all of the crafts that I have learned over the years, anywhere from sewing to sublimation to bleach shirts. I'm going to try to share a little bit of the knowledge I've picked up through just watching videos, learning by trial and error, and hopefully sharing some tips and tricks along the way. So today I'm going to be using some fabric from Jen's Fabric. Such great fabric. I typically use cotton lycra fabric. It's just what I prefer to sew with. I have a pattern that I've already printed and cut out. This pattern is a Jolly Roger raglan pattern. I'll put the link to the pattern below so you can check that out. You can also link to Jen's Fabric, so if you are looking for any kind of custom print fabric, Jen is amazing. She can create any ideas that you have. Jen can create it, and so lots of Disney inspired fabrics, lots of seasonal type fabrics, and I've done some sports teams fabrics as well from Jen. So I am going to share just a little bit about the tools that I'm using today. I'm using a brother serger. I got a serger and a sewing machine at the same time. I have barely touched the sewing machine. I'm doing most all of this with my serger. And then I've got a rotary cutter. If you don't have a rotary cutter, I highly recommend it. It's made it really easy to cut out these patterns. And then of course your pattern is going to be important. And then something that I've found along the way that's been helpful are these clips. And so instead of having to pin your fabric along the way, you could just clip the fabric and not have to worry about anything. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and cut out the pieces, and then I'm going to show you how to sew them together. Okay, so typically what I start with, I have for this particular pattern, I start with my front and the back pieces. You'll notice once you print these out, it's going to have you fold the fabric so that you can just cut on the fold and essentially just kind of unfold it and end up with an entire front piece and an entire back piece. There's going to be these little almost triangle looking things on the pattern. These are going to help guide you with where to pin the sleeves, so you can just do little snips with your scissors so that you know where to pin your matching sleeves to. So I am going to start with what we call a panel. So I'm going to cut the front piece out. So this is essentially going to be the front of our shirt, and then we're going to use this coordinating fabric that's going to be for the sleeves and the back of the shirt. As the front of the shirt, we're going to be cutting on the fold, so we're going to want to essentially fold this in half. So we want to find the middle of the fabric, or really the middle of the image, and then right about there. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of fold right in half, because we want Goofy right in the center of the shirt. All right. And then we are just going to lay our pattern right on the fabric, and I also have these little weights. They've come in handy. I can link these from the Amazon link on the bottom as well. So I just place these on the pattern, and then I can ensure that the pattern doesn't shift around while I'm cutting. And so all I'm going to do is so you can see that we've got Goofy right in the middle. So I'm going to set that aside. So we've got our front piece. And next we are going to do our back piece. If it's stretching while you're cutting, then it's not going to be the right sizes when you go to put your pieces together. All right, so we've got a nice fold. Since I folded this opposite way, I'm going to flip my pattern over so that the fold is on this side. It'll still cut out everything the same way, but I just have the pattern folded opposite. So we have our front, or we have our back piece now as well. So this is going to be our back piece, and we're going to set that aside. And then the next thing that we need to cut out is we need to cut out sleeves. For this one, I'm going to be doing short sleeve, and I'm also going to be doing a neck piece for this. The sleeves are going to be mirrored images, and so these you don't have to cut on a fold, but you do have to make sure that you have your fabric. You can have your fabric folded over and then easily just cut two pieces out at the same time. So we have two sleeves, and then I'm gonna cut my notches out, which I forgot to do. I always forget to cut the notches out, but we're gonna cut the two notches. So you have two on one side and you'll have one notch on the other side. And then we're gonna set that aside. And then the last thing that we're going to cut out, you have a couple of options with this particular pattern. We're definitely going to cut a neckband out. You also have cuff options. So you can either hem the bottom hem as well as the sleeves, or you can add bands. So this is where typically if I'm making a pair of shorts, I will just add bands. I don't hem anything. If I'm doing the shirts, I do like to have a bottom hem as well as the sleeves hemmed versus doing bands. If you do the bands, you can essentially use the serger for the whole project. If you do a hem, you do need to switch over to your sewing machine, or if you have a cover stitch machine, then you can use that as well. But the serger's not quite as easy with the hems unless you're doing like a blind hem or something like that. So I'm going to, again, the neck piece, usually you can kind of use just one of your little scrap pieces here from your other pieces, and you're just gonna set that down. I usually do just a little bit extra on the neck. I don't I don't like the neck to be super tight. I like to have a little bit of room. So from the pattern, I do go a little bit of extra length on it, just personal preference. And that's totally up to you. So now you should have all of your fabric pieces cut out. So you're going to have the front piece, you're going to have the back piece, you're going to have your two sleeves, and you're going to have your neckband. So what we're going to do next is we're going to pin everything together, okay? I'm going to go ahead and turn my sewing machine on. And I usually, not going to lie, takes me a little bit to get the pieces pinned correctly. Ultimately, we're going to be sewing right sides together, and so I'll lay my back and front pieces together, right sides together, kind of thinking about it, you know, if you look at the hems, you know, if you turn one of your shirts inside out, you'll see that everything is sewn kind of on the inside. So the idea is that, you know, you're going to sew on the inside, and then when you kind of open it up, you're going to have a nice seam that you're not going to be able to see. And so I kind of, the first thing I'm going to look at are these notches. And so you have your back piece on one side is going to have two notches, the front piece is going to have one notch, and then on the other side it's going to kind of be the same thing. So your back piece is going to have the notches that are going to match up with the sleeves. And so I am going to match the sleeve that has the two notches to the back piece that has the two notches. And then this is where your pins come in handy. I am just going to pin this along here. And I don't usually put too many pins, but it's, you know, it's totally up to you. I put probably 3 in each sleeve. And then you'll match the same right sides together on the front piece to your sleeve. And you're going to pin these together. And sometimes you can, I'm not going to lie, sometimes things don't look right. I'll pin it and then something doesn't look right. It'll start to look like a shirt when you start pinning these things together. So you should, you know, be able to quickly tell that something might be upside down or wrong side together. But basically what you're doing, you can kind of think about this as being a sleeve that's going to, you know, come together. And so this is going to be that part that is on your arm, and this is going to be the part that attaches to the shirt. And so when you start to really think about, you know, what your clothes look like and how they kind of fold up, it's a little bit easier to match the pieces together. This fabric, this pattern, when I link it in the bottom, there are instructions that go along with the pattern, which I found really, really easy to use. So it kind of tells you the order to do things in, and all that good stuff. And so I found that really helpful when I was starting to learn how to sew. And I'm not by far an expert now, but you know, it's kind of been a trial and error kind of thing. So don't expect your first shirt to be perfect. What I did is I started going on Facebook groups to find really cheap fabric to get started on, so that I wasn't purchasing expensive fabric and kind of messing it up. And so you can find people who are getting rid of their fabric. They call it destashing, so you can find that really easily. So I've got my sleeves pinned, and you'll see that it has the shape of a shirt now. It's an inside out shirt, but it does have the shape of a shirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and sew the sleeves on, and then we're going to pin the inside of the shirt and go from there. And so what I do, I've got my serger. There's a great video that when I first bought the serger, I was a little intimidated with threading it. I found a really great video on YouTube. I'll see if I can find that again with the instructions on how to thread your needle. When you get started, it doesn't really matter which section you start with. I just pick one, and then you are going to just kind of put it right under your foot and start to serge. And you're going to see how fast this goes. And when you're serging, you can serge off of the fabric, and then you just cut it, and so you have these finished ends. And so then I'm going to do the next one. So I've got the sleeves sewn on, so you should be able to see that you kind of end up with this. It almost is like a bib, sort of. And so now what we have to do is we have to sew the sides together. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I am going to start pinning these, or clipping them rather. And I usually start at the bottom. I don't think it matters as much. The key is that you want the armpit area to match up, and so you want to really line up the two seams in the armpit so that your sleeves are not out of whack. All right, so we've got this pinned. I usually start at the bottom because I like to give myself a little bit of time to get to the armpit, as far as making sure that I don't mess that part up. And so we are going to start serging. And then this is where you want to essentially straighten your fabric out when you get there. So you don't want to turn your fabric. You just want to continue to guide it in a straight line so that you don't cut parts that you don't want. And so it's a little bit of an art, takes a little bit of practice. What I did is I took some scrap pieces and just practiced going around curves like that. I'm doing the other side now. And I just kind of guide it with my left hand. And then this is where, again, you're going to kind of just straighten the fabric out. You don't want to force it to curve, because you'll end up cutting parts that you don't want to cut. And sometimes I still do. It is just a fact of learning. All right, so we have our shirt. I'm going to turn it right side out. Now, and you'll see we have this super cute little Easter shirt right here. So that's the front and the back. And it's amazing when you just kind of see it come together. So the next piece that I'm going to show you is the neckband. The neckband is just a strip. You're going to fold right sides together. I don't actually pin this, but I just serge the edge right there, and you're just essentially closing it up. So it's a really quick little sew. And then you're going to unfold it. This took me a little while to kind of get the hang of. Essentially, you're going to be folding a band like this. So if you kind of think about any kind of shirts that you own, typically your neckline has this kind of band around it, okay? You're going to want to pin these together, and the way that this works is I usually put the seam in the back right here, and I'll match the center of the shirt back to the seam on the band, okay? And I have to do this a couple of times because ultimately what's going to happen is we're going to sew these 3 pieces together. And so you're going to have your fold of your neckband plus your fabric of your shirt. So ultimately you're going to have 3 pieces of fabric that you're sewing together, or 3 layers of fabric that you're sewing together. And then once you sew this neckline around, it's gonna flip up. And so you have to be really careful of the direction that you fold your neckband, because ultimately it's going to be flipped out, and so you want it to be going the right direction when you flip it out. I sometimes have to do this a couple of times because it just trying to figure out what direction this stuff is going to go is sometimes difficult. And so I'm going to pin the neckband in a couple of different spots. So usually I try to stretch it and pin one side opposite of the stitch that I did to kind of put it together. So I'm going to put that stitch in the back, in the center, and I'm going to clip it to the shirt. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the front. And you're clipping the right side of the shirt to the band. And then we are going to also clip the sides. This one took me a little bit, like just in my mind, to wrap my head around how this was going to work. It took me a little bit longer, but once you do it a couple of times, it makes more sense. So you're essentially putting the right side of the fabric on the inside of the neckband. And what this does is you are going to flip this out, and so then you won't see the actual stitch. Now what you have to do is the neckband is a little bit shorter than the opening of the shirt, and so I start with the back of the shirt because I want to make sure that I get that stitch, that seam in the back somehow, because that's the way that you're going to put the shirt on, is by looking for that seam usually. And so I'll start, and you kind of, what I do is I hold 2 fingers, I hold my right hand on the neckband, and then I kind of hold the shirt on top of that. And then what I do is I stretch the neckband towards me, but I don't stretch the shirt. So the idea is that the neckband is a little bit smaller, and so in order for you to have enough fabric to work with all the way around, you got to stretch the neckband while you sew.